Hello, welcome to Orlando Soundwaves. I'm Cheryl Bain. This is week 6, day 30. Happy Friday. This week we end our reading on a good note. We'll be reading Romans chapter 3, verses 21 through 25. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There's no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of His blood, to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate His righteousness, because in His forbearance He had left the sins He committed beforehand unpunished. Now let's go over our 7 arrows, or our 7 questions. What does this passage say? What did this passage mean to its original audience? What does this passage tell us about God? What does this passage tell us about humans? What does this passage demand of me? How does this passage change the way I relate to people? And finally, what does this passage prompt me to pray to God? Now let's look at our devotional on page 45 of our book. Paul connects a number of different parts of God's story in this short section of Romans 3. God gave the Israelites the law to show them God's standard for holiness and how they fall desperately short. But it is not the law that makes them fall short. All people, those who have the law and those who don't, sin and fall short of God's glory. They aren't great like God. They aren't holy like God. They don't love like God. Simply put, sinful humans don't do a great job reflecting God's image. Jesus changes all of this. He offered His life to take the wrath of God for sin and bring His people back into right relationship with God. This allows God to be just. Jesus received our judgment, and also to be a justifier because He saved sinful men and women through their faith in Jesus' work. If you find this a bit confusing, just hang on tight. We'll return to this concept again and again over the coming weeks. For now, just remember that all people are born sinners and therefore can't reflect God properly. However, Jesus changes all this through His death and resurrection. That's it for this week, friends. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to look at some New Testament verses that point back to this original story in Genesis. Have a good weekend.